How do you do this?
Welcome again. Now we're going to have a presentation from Resilient Thessaloniki about the project. 5 minutes.
Okay.
And then we can continue with the roundtable.
How do you change slides?
Nico?
Can you make Yeah, should I start or wait a bit more? Oh, I'm starting. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see you here. My name is Leon Kapetas, and I'm here to present you our project, Resilient Thessaloniki, and I present on behalf of our urban resilience team of the municipality of Thessaloniki. And I would like to greet you also on behalf of the Deputy Mayor of the Development Programs and Urban Resilience, Ms. Lina Liakou, who couldn't be here today. So basically, Thessaloniki joined the 100 Resilient Cities Network, which is a network of cities that study their urban resilience, and it's pioneered by the Rockefeller Foundation to celebrate its 100 years since its foundation. I guess none of you, or just a few of you, know what urban resilience is. I also had problems with the concept. I knew what urban means, I knew what resilience means, but both things together I didn't know. So basically, urban resilience is the ability or capacity of individuals, communities, institutions, businesses, and systems within a city to survive, adapt, and grow no matter what kinds of chronic stresses and acute shocks they experience. Here's a very good graphical way to understand this definition. You can see that progress against time against progress of a city, and suddenly a city can experience a shock, such as an earthquake, for instance. And if it's not resilient, what you will see is that it will never recover to its previous path of development. So it will go a little bit up, a bit down, maybe another earthquake will come, maybe not. And but however, if the city is planned and designed to be resilient, it will not only recover to its path of development, but it can also exceed it. So we need to make cities resilient. Here are two examples of why cities need to be resilient. On the left hand, you can see Mandalay from Myanmar, a developing country, which is experiencing flooding. It's a regular event there. And you can see on the right hand that also developed countries have similar problems. And in this case, it's stress, which is aging infrastructure in Pittsburgh. What is the 100 Resilient Cities Network? It is a network of 100 cities, as you can guess, and it had 3 rounds of selection. Thessaloniki joined the second round of selection. The first year it was 33 cities, and another 34 joined, and recently, the last 2 months, the last 33 joined. And you can see we have a great distribution of cities. There are cities, US, in all continents, basically. What basically this network offered us is exchanging good practices and experiences with the other cities, and we can exchange tools. For example, you can ask, hey, San Francisco, you're very good with data management and technology. How can we do this? We are quite retarded here. And what is the office does here? Basically, the Office of Urban Resilience develops a strategic plan for the city. We're planning for 2030 with a vision for 2050, and we plan under the prism of resilience qualities. These are the 7 qualities of resilience. They look quite obvious, but most applications, actions we do not consider more than half of these qualities. For instance, you want to design a new hospital. Where do you place it? How accessible is it? Does it have the capacity you need? These are considerations many times go wrong. Here is an interesting diagram to show the resilience timeline of Thessaloniki. Thessaloniki has a history of more than 2,000 years, so it's been quite resilient over time. And we can see that in the last 100 years since its independence, it has experienced, in 1917, a great fire, in 1922, a big refugees inflow of more than 250,000. Then we had loss of population of 50,000 Jews that left the concentration camps. And we had a major earthquake in 78, a big accident in an oil factory in 86, and so on. And we want to make city resilient against challenges like those. Therefore, we need to have to make some projections, expect what we're going to see in the future. So we do projections. We use available data. We see global trends and national trends at the same time, and we form scenarios. And framing these scenarios can help us develop our strategic plan. This is the team. Basically, our leader is Lina Liakou, the Chief Resilience Officer, myself, Vasilis Akilas, who's also a consultant of Natural and Built Environment, Maria Sejolu, who's here. She's a consultant of social policy and community engagement, Aphrodite Voukidis, who's looking at innovation, entrepreneurship, and international partnerships, and our junior associate, Eleftheria, who is into urban infrastructure and environment. I had to keep it short, so if you have any questions, you can contact us in the email there, and do follow us in Facebook. Thank you.
One last presentation from Ecothes. We are truly supporting this initiative, but further information will be delivered by Mr. Trasanikis.
It's my great pleasure to participate at this very innovative conference. I would like to warmly thank Students for Sustainability for this kind invitation, and of course Mr. Borniadis as the inspirator of this event. I'm thrilled and honored to talk about our project in the second International Conference on Sustainable Development in front of all of you. My name is Orestes Trasanidis. I am a mechanical engineer, and in the last 3 months I have the responsibility as project manager to coordinate the Ecothes project, which started in 2 parallel events, the Ecothes Workshop 2016 and the Ecothes Photo Contest 2016. A new project powered by EcoCity and the Technical Chamber of Greece section of Central Macedonia, organized from young people. Before I analyze shortly the structure of Ecothes, let me share with you our initial thoughts that motivate us and inspire us. Creating a sustainable lifestyle takes a long commitment to learning, experimenting, committing to increasingly sustainable practices, and above all, loving your environment and your society. Beyond all the fighting news, beyond the failed, frustrating politics, beyond the failed international agreements, there is one question: how you want to live your life. For all of us in EcoFest, the answer lies on creativity, respect, team spirit, innovation, and hard work. There's such simple principles, and yet because of the crisis here in Greece, many young people don't follow them. As a result, we wanted to create a good example of what you can do when you apply them in reality, and we designed EcoFest. First, EcoFest Workshop 2016. The workshop duration is 2 weeks and is separated into 2 stages. Stage 1, design. Stage 2, implementation, shortly from theory to practice. The workshop started 1 week ago. 40 young engineers from different specialties will learn from specialists about sustainable development, product design, building business plan canvas, and about construction with almost zero energy consumption, using the knowledge that we will learn from them combined with ours as a tool. We create a design of how we visualize a degraded part of Anthokomiki Park here in the municipality of Thessaloniki to be rebuilt. In our designs, we used eco-friendly materials such as pallets, plants for the creation of the constructions, and we placed mini photovoltaic panels to give the power to lights and brush so anyone can use them to come and have fun. The main concept of our design is don't grow up, go green. Next week we will learn about safety, and using the appropriate tools we will give life to our designs. All of you are invited to come and visit the result of all of this on Saturday, 29th of May. If you come, you will see among the above the best photos of our photo contest with theme contradictions. We asked from professionals and amateur photographers to send us photos that illustrate environmental and social problems of Thessaloniki at one hand, and in the other, beautiful side of the site, so we can raise public awareness about the problems and give joy and courage to solve them. The EcoFest project is aiming to raise public awareness and involvement, also to create smart citizens, a good practice to increase the sustainability in a city. We want to develop in the future to a policy-making tool for all sustainable cities. If you want to help us to do so, visit our site, learn more about us, and please make us better with your opinion. At this point, I want to thank my team, Stella Siskou, Elisabeth Haralambidou, Andreas Batsilas, and Konstantina Bikou. If it was not them today, I would not be here. Thank you all for your attention.
So now we will continue with the second round table. Let me introduce Mr. Nikolas Misiopoulos. We have already presented a short survey before the lunch break, so I'm continuing to Professor Dr. Vali Koubi. Vali Koubi is a professor at the Center for Comparative and International Studies at the ETH Zurich and the Department of Economics at the University of Bern, Switzerland. She studied public law and political science at the University of Athens and holds a Master of Science in Public Policy, a Master of Arts, and a PhD in Political Science, all from the University of Rochester, USA. She has taught at several universities in the USA and Europe, and is the recipient of various scholarships and research grants. She has served as an expert reviewer for various national and international agencies. And moving on to Dr. Sotiris Serbos. He is an assistant professor in international politics at Democritus University of Thrace and research fellow in European foreign policy at Jean Monnet European Center of Excellence of the University of Athens in Greece. He studied international relations at the University of Macedonia, the London School of Economics and Political Science, and the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens. Serbos' research interests include transatlantic relationships, European integration and foreign policy analysis, with emphasis placed on Southeastern Europe, Greek and Turkish foreign policy.
Thank you. I would also like to for the discussion, and it's a great very for the discussion there for a few minutes. Okay, so Oh, yes. Already you have heard this morning that in September of 2015, all 190 members of the United Nations adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which included a set of 17 sustainability development goals, which aimed at achieving 3 extraordinary things: end poverty, fight against injustice and inequality, and of course deal with the climate change regime. One thing, however, that the 2030 agenda didn't mention, it was refugees. Some people may say, oh yeah, but it's been covered under the security and justice issue, but it's not enough. And the reason is because today, violent conflict, violence in general, political violence, conflict in particular, but also climate-related disasters, forcibly displace millions of people worldwide every year. Just to give you an example, in 2014, there were approximately 60 million people who had been fled their houses. And we know from our personal experience, last year, by middle 2015, by June, there were approximately 1.3 million Syrians into the European Union, and in total, for the last 4 years, it's 4 million registered Syrian refugees from this crisis that, of course, everybody knows that they have spread beyond the region and into Europe. So yes, we need to be interested in this kind of issue. Sorry, my voice is terrible. How do we respond to this? The international community so far has supported humanity and obviously to provide refugees with emergency assistance such as food, shelter, and medical services. But it has not succeeded. It has not succeeded by any means in delivering sustainable solutions for refugees and internally displaced people, and has created dependency on prolonged humanitarian aid while maintaining their refugee status. In other words, the humanitarian aid or the humanitarian aid-based approach is not a viable solution, a viable option in terms of effective problem solving. So, what should be done? We have to look behind this humanitarian aid and try to tackle the root causes of displacement, which are underdevelopment, conflict, and environmental degradation. But, another but, underdevelopment, conflict, and environmental degradation are interdependent. And what do I mean by that? Underdevelopment is a major source of conflict. And we know that by now, that poverty leads to conflict, but at the same time, it creates environmental exploitation. Then conflict leads to underdevelopment, and of course, environmental degradation. And then environmental degradation creates resource depletion, competition, and conflict. So, what do? Sustainable development, sustainable solutions. Sustainable solutions to refugees crisis requires the transformation of humanitarian aid into long-term development efforts, which in the process eliminate socioeconomic and political exclusion and inequality. Humanitarian aid and development need to go together. They need to occur in a tandem and with some great degree of coordination. And how this can be achieved? The most important one is to assist countries to escape an underdevelopment, conflict, environmental degradation trap. Everybody talks about that. Conflict breeds poverty, poverty breeds conflict, and you're in a kind of vicious cycle. And this occurs when socioeconomic, political, and environmental grievances remain unaddressed. So, we start with this kind of short-term safety nets, which will be linked to efforts promoting, one, sustainable long-term economic development. We already have heard earlier today about training, about education, and the like. Yes, we have to enhance education and vocational training. We know that human capital is one of the most important determinants of economic growth. We also know that investing in technologies and infrastructure is equally important. From my personal experience, I was in Uganda about 2 years ago, trying to find out whether climatic conditions lead to migration. People do not want to leave their places by any means. They will try to do everything they can in order to adapt. But without serious efforts of adaptation, if the World Bank keeps pouring $50 million, which half of it, actually 3/4 of it, goes to operational cost and corruption and bribery, and only around 20% is left for the people to be fed, and by fed I mean distributing rice, that it's 1 period, 2 periods, 3 periods. What about the future? People do not know how to cultivate their land. They dig a hole, they put some corn in, and given that they have a constant drought and it rains, when it rains it pours, everything goes away. This is what I mean by training, by vocational help, by something that is going to help them to adapt, and adapt in the long term. But at the same time, what they need, it is state capacity building, improve bureaucratic quality, change political institutions. And this is going to happen with the involvement of large sections of the population in the political decision making. In most countries where crises occur, where refugees happen, the refugees crisis happened, are failed states. You don't have this kind of situation in the developed world. There are environmental disasters, but still, the countries, the governments can respond to this kind of the refugees' demands. What about, the international community? The international community, which encompasses not only individual nation states, but also international organizations, as well as non-governmental organizations, even individuals, even small localities, ought to amass the necessary resources to ensure the delivery of the support needed to sustain those fleeing the dregs of conflict and extreme environmental events. This is part of the so-called kind of humanitarian aid, but that should be in the short term, not in the long-term effect. They have to work, most importantly, and this should be the most important focus that, the most important element that they have to take care of, is to work towards the eradication of the causes of the refugees' plight at their home countries. Corruption, bad governance, bad underdevelopment. And finally, they have to work towards the integration of the refugees in their host countries in order to mitigate future problems. In other words, and as you can see from here, aid it's not a substitute, okay, and it cannot be a substitute for the political resolution of conflict or underdevelopment. And this is my main message. And then, what about the social? what about the integration? Integration measures should include aim at economic as well as social and political integration. Refugees should not be viewed as a burden. Their presence definitely could bring opportunities and benefits not only for local communities but also for national economies. Refugees, when they come to their host countries, they bring together their human capital. Let's not forget that, in the old times when populations moved around, yes, sometimes they exploit other populations, but all the time, what they brought, it was the human capital. And when the exploitation of the human capital of the newcomers is put into good use, not only the refugees, but all the local communities are going to be benefited, and especially countries of the developed world where population is aging and where labor constraints are going to become major, okay, in the near future. Refugees or migrants in general would be a very, very good source of labor. So, to end, if states, what is this? If states are seriously, if states are resolutely committed to the 2030 Agenda's pledge of no one will be left behind, then they should not neglect the millions of current and future refugees who are at the real risk of being left behind. And thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the kind invitation as well, and special congrats should be extended to the young men that are placing themselves at the forefront of the. In the framework of the roundtable, I will provide a broad overview, mainly from an international relations, international politics perspective, meaning placing more emphasis on the spirit of refugees. Although it is when sustainable development, I would like in the last part of my presentation to have a more, let's say, positive note on the sustainable development front, at least in some of the most troubled regions of the world, like the Middle East or the Greater Middle East. I know that both in Europe and in the West as a whole, our focus on the refugee crisis in Europe obscures the larger inconvenient truth or truths of a global crisis of displacement that actually endangers the international order as a whole. This is a crisis largely born out of war, but not only out of war, as Professor Kubi mentioned. And unfortunately, it might be one that will be with us for decades to come. So understanding this reality is essential if at least the Europeans want to come up with an effective response. Deadly conflict, above all, is driving the massive exodus of refugees. Wars in places like Afghanistan, Somalia, and Syria alone were responsible for more than half of the world's refugee population as of mid-2015. 40 million people, 2/3 of the world's forcibly displaced, are displaced within their own countries by conflict and violence. The Middle East, with its political upheaval and conflict in recent years, has seen the fastest increase in forced displacement. Since March 2011, the Syrian war alone has accounted for almost 12 million displaced people, meaning a bit more compared to the population of Greece. This was 1/5 of the world's total displaced and over half of the country's population in Syria. Thereby, it has been responsible for the largest wave of refugees to hit Europe since World War II. In World War II, we had 40 million people as refugees. So after a period during which wars declined in number in the past half decade, a bit more, we have seen a rise in armed conflicts and the clashes have become more deadly. Unfortunately, in today's wars, civilians are also targeted with impunity by the fighting parties, and international humanitarian norms to protect civilians are routinely violated. Of course, with all this stream of refugees trying to enter Europe, this has helped upgrading this issue to the front pages of Western media. This will not be the case for the time to come. But states adjacent to wars have seen far larger influxes of refugees. Western audiences are barely aware that the three countries that sheltered the most refugees as of mid-2015 were Turkey, Pakistan, and Lebanon. Nor are Westerners fully conscious of the conditions endured by the 2.5 million people forced from their home countries to Chad, Ethiopia, Kenya, Sudan, and Uganda. At the end of 2014, some 86% of the world's displaced were living in developing countries that already struggled with enormous economic development and, of course, governance challenges. And keep in mind that the life cycle of a refugee crisis is a long one. The average time a person spends as a refugee stood at a record 17 years in early 2014, while the rate of those returning home was the lowest in decades. Of course, refugees create risk factors for new cycles of conflict, generating further refugee flows, etc. Countries that host disproportionately large numbers of refugees without adequate support, again, they can be destabilized, fueling existing economic, political, and security strains, so it becomes something like a vicious circle. The legacy of today's refugee populations is a generation of young people who lack economic prospects, political representation, or even participation. Around half of refugee children receive no schooling. This is an issue that we will also have to effectively tackle it in Greece. In this situation, refugees who in some cases in countries, they can unfortunately sometimes become targets for radicalization by extremist groups. No one, of course, can claim to accurately predict future wars, the impacts they will have on refugee flows, but clearly there are risks of worsening conflict. Continuing chaos in the Middle East would generate more terrorism, also refugees, while sub-Saharan Africa, including Libya's failed state status, what's more, we can also add the effects of climate change in the future. They have the potential to become a major source of conflict and transnational terrorism. One can highlight an extensive list around the globe in contexts from instability in the Lake Chad Basin, state fragility in Central Asia, the resurgent Kurdish conflict in Turkey, transnational crime in Mexico, in Central America, so on and so forth. From an IR perspective, on a larger scale, the conflicts driving today's refugee crisis are symptomatic of the shifting structure of the international system that has been developed over the past 70 years, increasing the risk of violence and weakening the world's collective capacity for conflict management. Geopolitical shifts under a revised balance of power strategy, intensifying rivalries between major powers, and rising regional tensions have fueled conflict and made wars hard to end. Unfortunately, this undermines support for active engagements that are needed to prevent and contain local crises. Syria's case study as a buffer zone for stiff competition between both state and non-state actors serves as a representative example. In light of the above, and this is very crucial for the future prospects of the West, the cohesion of the West as the cornerstone of liberal international order remains doubtful, while widening divisions within the EU, including the interplay between domestic politics and foreign policy, show how the refugee crisis places further strain on the values and political solidarity that underpin the bloc. Perplexing even more, the pressing need for boosting an alignment of the Union's external and internal policies as never before. Even to discuss, as Professor Kubi has also mentioned, when it comes to the role of target is one of the tools for addressing Europe's poor demographics. Of course, as you can understand, in a highly political environment, it's more difficult to approach these sensitive issues under a more rational manner. There are some important directives, the foremost being the need to better finance humanitarian responses, respect the rights of refugees, and improve refugees' conditions and prospects. Ultimately, however, policymakers need to address the major conflicts that are the principal drivers of displacement. Policymakers must do more. It's not an easy task to de-escalate the international and regional geopolitical rivalries that lead of war to better orientation and develop failures and grievances that turn into violence. Looking to the longer term, key members of the global order, and I'm referring to 21st century global order, meaning old members but also newcomers, need in a responsible manner to lead the way in rebuilding the international community's credibility, to reinforce institutions that were established to strengthen peace and security, stop the steady erosion of international law. The primacy of international humanitarian and human rights law must be reasserted so that civilians caught up in conflict are protected rather than targeted. The refugee crisis goes beyond human tragedy. Recognizing that this is a long-term problem, responsible countries must adopt a long-term mindset to deal with it. This, of course, presents various difficulties. Unfortunately, it has tainted the arrival of the refugee crisis on the beaches and in the cities of Europe for to fight wars that have sent their victims to European shores. When all is said and done, the need for increased policy coordination between our central governance becomes more than evident. For example, the G20 is one of the fora that can be useful towards this direction. A final note regarding a more positive prospect for the region, and if we have any good news on the global sustainable development front, there is some kind also of a link with Professor Mousiopoulos' presentation before lunch. Just a few weeks ago, the Deputy Crown Prince announced Saudi Arabia's project to make what could be one of the world's investments in solar power and meet the country's renewable energy target, diversify away from oil by 2020. There is an initial target set for the installation of 9.5 gigawatts of renewable energy, at least according to the country's transformation plan that was just published in late April. The plan is likely to be a mixture of solar photovoltaic, concentrated solar power and wind. The investment will be around $20 billion. There are a couple of infrastructures already taking place near Riyadh and on the Persian Gulf Coast as a whole. One has to note, Professor Mousiopoulos already mentioned the cases of Germany and Portugal in Europe. One has to note that in addition to having some of the world's richest oil fields, Saudi Arabia also has some of the world's most intense sunlight. The potential of the country is enormous, since it has an average of 3,000 hours of sunlight annually, almost double compared to Berlin's 1,700 hours. And of course, Germany has been the leader in renewable. So the government's target of 9.5 gigawatts is quite modest compared to Saudi Arabia's potential, as the country's energy consumption is anticipated to increase threefold by 2030. Renewables present the best option to help the electricity sector, which is almost exclusively powered by via crude oil. Of course, it will be a grand project. There are a number of experts that remain quite concerned and skeptics about the long-term vision. This would require quite reshuffling Saudi Arabia's economic debt, deck, I'm sorry, because for decades we have this model to favor petroleum. But in that sense, Saudi Arabia's energy challenge is a more extreme version of the one that faces the rest of the world. But if the kingdom's leaders can find the political courage and the political will to act decisively, Saudi Arabia of all nations could become a model for other countries to follow, and that means trying to shift away from oil and bring forward a more than promising and rewarding strategy in terms of sustainable development. Thank you for your attention.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, 10 years ago, Muhammad Yunus from Bangladesh was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for Bangladesh, pioneering the concepts of microcredit and microfinance. These loans are given to entrepreneurs who are too poor to qualify for traditional bank loans. When the committee it spoke of appreciation because credit one can create economic and social development from below. And they added also that lasting peace cannot be achieved unless large population groups find ways in which to break out of poverty. And across cultures and civilizations, Yunus and the Grameen Bank have shown poorest of the poor can work to bring about their own development. To me, this is the key to overcome all these problems lead to crisis. The ratio, actually, the migrants and refugees are addressing here, but as the title includes this with the sustainable development, I want to start reminding you of this decision of the Nobel Committee because I think it set signals already 10 years ago. I mean, the problem of not enough raw materials and energy has already been discussed in this conference. I believe that there are, of course, concepts that can lead us in the proper direction. I had the chance this morning to speak of the near zero marginal cost of energy, and not only energy. When I try to address also Jeremy Rifkin's ideas that are in the core of the policy of the European Union towards the energy transition. Jeremy Rifkin speaks always on the necessity to make all these things which are important for well-being to as many people as possible, because energy as well as culture belong to the minimum requirements for people to feel, let's say, safely where they are, and to, of course, if they have enough food, which is an additional point, which is not trivial for a number of nations. So that's, to me, a key issue in order to address these points in a global scale would be to think of a global governance that would ensure that all people in the world have these necessary elements, starting with, of course, enough food and access to information, access to through energy, and access to education, and the chance to contribute also to the decisions of their own groups through democratic rules that should be, of course, everywhere, because most of the crises have to do also with the problem that in several countries people are not a chance to contribute to the decisions for their own future, for the future of their kids. And therefore, these are the elements which are to me very important. Now, how to solve this in an economic way, and how to find the, let's say, tools that the economy would contribute in this direction. Of course, we need for the economy to sustain growth, but this growth can never be sustainable if it does not take into consideration that you need stronger growth there where the development is still lacking. Okay, so that if one finds a way to have a balance which should provide for a smaller growth rates in developed economies and the larger growth rates in countries where you need desperately more growth. Maybe in the context of the global Marshall Plan, which existed after the Second World War, several people spoke of this idea, and the Club of Rome fully supported such a Marshall Plan, which could be also a win-win situation, because if the poor countries succeed in achieving a stronger development, then there will be enough businesses also for the producers who are sitting primarily in the developed countries. So there should be such a model which I believe is feasible, which however would require a global governance. It's important that we, that maybe moving from G7 to G20 is a step in the correct direction, because G7 was more or less the club of the very rich and very developed countries, whereas G20 we have now, of course, the majority of the people in the world represented. I believe, to come to an end with my statement here, that such a green and inclusive world which one could achieve on this way could be also a solution for the conflicts and the crises that lead increasingly to the migration and refugee problem, because the conflicts which occur are, to me, also a possible consequence of the inequalities and of the missing democratic conditions in several countries. And I hope that you, young people among us, will experience such a new global governance, which then would be also more justice, more equality in these planets. Okay. Well, now we said quite a lot here, but you are now also entitled to pose questions, contribute, and for you, who would like to start? Yes.
Hello, thank you so much for your speeches. They were clearly to the point, and it was from the few times that the actual problems were brought upon the surface. First of all, Madam Professor, I would like to ask you your personal opinion. Are you optimistic about the 2030 agenda? Because there were lots of people that were really disappointed that the progress made from the Millennium Declaration as far as poverty and fighting of the disease, etc., etc. I would also like to ask your personal opinion about the management, the overall management of the refugee crisis, the overall management of laws, as long as there are countries like Australia that they do operations like sovereign borders, and they do not accept any refugees in their territory. As far as Mr. Professor is concerned, I would like to reach out about the penalization of the non-compliance with the international humanitarian law in international armed conflicts and on non-international armed conflicts. Thank you so much for your experience and for your time. Thank you.
Okay, whether I'm optimistic about the 2030 agenda, yes and no. I think, yes, we're quite critical about the Millennium Goals, but still, there has been a lot of progress. And in poverty eradication, I mean, I don't exactly remember the numbers, but the percentages have, for malnutrition and uneducated illiteracy have fallen dramatically in the last 15 years. The thing is that, yes, we started for so low, okay, that things, of course, they will look rosy. It doesn't matter what. The problem is going to be to bring this bottom billion, because this is what we're talking. Look at the, you see that poverty, conflicts, refugees, as you mentioned, it's all around, you know, in the middle from, you know, Central Latin America, going to Sub-Saharan region and continue to Middle East and then India and Indonesia. So the thing is, and you mentioned global governance. What is global governance? Global governance is the nation states of the and see in the same way. What they want is based already on their preferences beforehand, based on their endowments, and you know whether, for example, with climate change they will be better off or worse. Everybody says climate change is bad for everybody. No, it's not bad for everybody. And remember, politicians, it doesn't matter if they're autocrats or if they're Democrats. What they care, it's about now. Okay, and no Democratic leader cares about what is going to happen in the future. He's not going to be around to be voted for. So to impose a high cost right now with benefits in the future, it's not kind of a rational behavior for the politicians. It might be rational for the whole earth, but it's not rational for them. So you start with this ex-ante kind of differences in the preferences and endowments, and then if you move in the ex-post, yes, we know that there is a refugee crisis, yes, we know that there's a climate change, but who's going to pay for it? You talked about international cooperation. Everybody would like to live in a peaceful world, everybody would like to live in a rich world, but it doesn't come cheap. And it is a global public good. All of those things that you mentioned, the free riding problem is there. Everybody would like to free ride. You don't have an international government by any means whatsoever. You don't have a government that will act as a domestic government. Yesterday, they had a nice experiment in the works in the afternoon. They tried to see under what conditions cooperation would materialize, and it was about the refugees and the different sectors of the economy. It ended up that it was side payments that did the trick of the cooperation. But who is going to pay in the international arena to make the trip? He mentioned the Marshall Plan. Okay, who is going to be the hegemon to pay for it? You said about the 9 or the 20 countries.
I gave the answer that if all recognize the win-win situation, you might find those who could be interested to pay for their own benefit.
In the future. So the whole issue becomes, no, it's intergeneration or intergeneration. If everybody considers the future of their kids, I'm sure all of us will agree. But if we're talking about who's benefited right now in an international system, cooperation, according to my views, okay, it's extremely difficult to be accomplished. And only and only if you find somebody who really wants to. International organizations could be a point, up to a point. But even in environmental treaties, Canada decided 2 years ago, okay, I'm dropping out of the Kyoto Protocol a year before it expired, so they would not be found in violation. Unfortunately, this.
You're very pragmatic.
Yes, I am.
Professor Santos.
From my perspective, yes, it's true that in principle we have the primacy of the law, but in practice a lot of times we do have double standards, we do have monitor mechanisms in terms of the crisis around the globe that really provide us a lot of information that we do not have from the nation states, meaning that more work needs to be done regarding the crisis in general. And if we are succeed of that, then of course we can establish a better framework on regarding all the legal issues. But what concerns me most is that even in the case of contemporary Europe, I mean Europe in the 21st century, we've seen a lot of time discussing about humanitarian assistance or humanitarian law on a voluntary basis. So how far this links with the values of Europe, the role of Europe in the world's liberal order when something that has to be compulsory becomes voluntary. So there is also work to be done from our side, maybe of the West, in order to be in a better position to enforce your values and your rules around the ones that are cheaters and that do not respect them. So if you send them these double messages, it's like, you know, the two different parents that send different signals to their kids. Okay, you can imagine the one that wants to challenge the international community, which message would like most. On the issue of global governance, more or less I agree with Professor Koubis. I'm not also very optimist, but I think that also what Professor Mouchis tried to put on the table is what I also said, that either we like it or not, there are all these global challenges that there is a way around them. They require global solution in terms that we must have open channels of communication, underlining the need for increased policy coordination, of course in an anarchical society, but I'm talking about increased policy coordination between the power centers of a multipolar world and the world that is completely different compared to 1945 following the Second World War. Okay? So in this respect, we could also have examples of informal mechanisms of putting all these actors together, I mean, like the G20. And the idea is also all these newcomers that we have on board, for the old members to try to say to them, look, we can agree for you to have more powers, but you do not. You have also responsibilities as a member of the international community. And that means that you should actually exercise your power in a more constructive, in a more responsible, in a more win-win, let's say, a more beneficial situation for all members. Maybe they divide, actually prepare the newcomers for the new role that are going to have, either we like it or not, in the years to come. I mean, this is a reality. And also Europe has to become more flexible and more agile in today's environment. Thank you.
And only maybe one more comment. Of course, I'm also pragmatic, but at the same time, I try always to bring optimism in the foreground. Otherwise, it's really not positive signals, and there are positive signals now.
I agree, but I don't agree that it will come from above, from the nation states. What you need is also a lot of civil society involvement, but in a transparent and a democratic way, because, you know, even civil societies, even civil society, you know, the interest will be there, and interest is also self-interest. So if they are transparent, if they are democratic, and if they are, you know, actively engaged at the international level, say at the Conference of the Party for Climate Change, or, you know, in the development of international laws and the like, then you might see some more progress. But if you leave nation states to make the decisions, unless there is a recognition, and my discount factor is pretty low, nothing is going to happen. We know that. That is the
I think that we fully agree. I started my position with the bottom-up, fully in the several countries who fully ignoring all humanitarian principles in Europe, preferred constructing fences and forgetting the fate of all these poor people that not reach. Demonstrate that we are quite far from the vision of such an ideal world. But anyhow, now the next question: who would
the
like to
common
continue?
village.
Is there some other question from the audience?
I would like to ask something.
Yes, fine.
Thank you. I know that this is all in a theoretical basis, mainly, but in something you said, Professor Kby, that it's important for citizens to participate more in, how you said it, in, I think. It's all nice and it looks very nice that we all participate in some big or taking big actions and everything, but it's difficult for me, although I'm not a pessimist, it's difficult for me to see how, apart from building communities, I can't see how we as citizens could participate actively in the decision making of governments, not in international but in a national level. Thank you.
Great, great. Okay. Here it is assumed if democracies work as they should work, they represent the interests of the people. And supposedly it is the incentives of the leaders to provide for whatever you want, because he is not going to be re-elected. Okay. There are some issues where you can have a direct effect on that, and probably the politicians have to respond right away because they are not going to be elected next time. The issues that we are discussing, like refugees, or energies, or climate change, they will never be able to resolve in one country per se. Because you can pass any type of environmental regulation you want, you can completely ban coal or anything. The effect you are going to have on climate change is pretty much organized in the morning. Okay? So any politician right now, if he wants to do something about climate change, it has to pose a lot of cost on you, which means cost not only as a consumer, but that is going to create unemployment, that is going to create too many problems for the politician to be re-elected. That was the reason why supposedly the United States did not ratify the Kyoto Protocol. The theory was that by ratifying the Kyoto Protocol, the American economy will suffer relatively to the Chinese. Assuming, okay, that by trading you become wealthier, okay, and if you are able to convert the wealth from the trade into military power, then you might have a problem. This is how the Americans saw it, okay? And don't forget, the United States has to be a major participant in the climate change negotiations because it's now is the second emitter. So this is the political stuff, okay? But you also in this, in a democracy, you can organize. You have civil liberties, supposedly. You can organize, you can protest, you can write letters to your parliamentarian and express your discontent or your demands. And then again, it is there's a lot too much theory about under what conditions. But in the international system, again, it is this kind of all the time the trade-off between the welfare now and the welfare of the future. And what we do see, I mean, if you look at the data and you see who participates in international treaties, who ratifies international treaties, who does the best to comply with the treaties, is democracy relative to autocracy, on average, okay? Because exceptions exist.
We have time for one last question because we are quite late. Is there any more?
Can I ask them?
Yes, of course.
I would like to ask Ms. Kby and all of your speakers regarding the the way that we can actually use and to our advantage the influx of refugees, not only Greece but in general. Because you discussed about the conflicts and that, okay, the main way problem is to tackle the source and not have the conflicts in the first place. But anyway, as you discussed, there are many places all over the world where we can see and we can predict that there will be these conflicts and they will cause some refugees all over the world. And right now we're facing this in Greece, whether we like it or not. So we have to find a solution. One of these, and we discussed it yesterday in the workshops actually, it would be how to actually use this workforce that will come and to our advantage and to make it to our benefit instead of being only a burden for the site. So I would like if you can share your ideas with us.
But I think I mentioned that I don't see the refugees as a burden. I see them as an opportunity, and especially in the developed world, the refugees.
So we see them mostly as a burden at the moment.
No, I don't see them as a burden. Okay, I don't see them as a burden. You have to make a distinction. Okay, we're talking about refugees. Not everybody's refugees. According to international law, refugees are only the people who are trying to escape persecution. Okay. The environmental migrants, there's a big debate whether environmental movers, okay, people who move because of environmental problems, are refugees or they're migrants. The thing is that according to international law, they are not refugees, so they cannot ask for asylum. Okay, and then you have the economic migrants, people who are job. I'm a theoretical person. If you think again on theory, okay, why people migrate in general? Okay, it is because the locational attributes, it's not conducive into their interests. They don't make them happy, they don't fed them, any of those things. So all the time people will make this relative comparison. What do I get now? What can we get if I go somewhere? And also we talk in environmental terms in this way. We are talking about pull and push factors. Okay? The push factors are the environmental degradation because it reduces your utility. It can be economic utility, it can be the nightmares you have because every other day there is a hurricane, okay, or a flood. It doesn't matter. You don't get happiness out of it. And then you have the pull factors, which is better economic conditions, better life, better of everything. In order for anybody to say what is what, both of them they play a role, you have to make the relative comparison. Okay? So, in case of, now, environmental migrants, it is people usually, from what I have found in my own research, are the short-term environmental events. It's not the long-term. And we, everybody of us, we are going to be much more keen to accepting somebody who suffered a flood or the Katrina, a major environmental event. But if they have suffered a drought, then you may say, okay, they had a drought. Our farmers have a drought. Why they don't try another season and another season? One season after the other depletes your resources completely, and you end up to be a drought population. You cannot go anywhere anymore. So if people have this kind of, some kind of qualities, human capital, because we know that people who come from Syria are not the bottom. They are people who have secondary education and tertiary education, which means if they were to come to Europe, they can learn the language fast, okay, and they can retrain, and they can be used to work right away. The question is, to what extent will the Euro exploit them? Because you have higher labor supply now, the wages are going to go down, so all the people who work in this kind of sectors of the economy will complain that the refugees are going to get the job, instead of trying to be more productive, instead of them become more eager to retrain themselves. What boils down, it is political will, I'm sorry. Again, it's politics.
although in some countries the age pyramids requests that
We want them.
And Germany, for instance, reacted the way they reacted because they really need desperately about 1 million young people who, of course, are, as you said, well educated and can enter the society, can learn German maybe, because at the moment they are learning the language first.
But it's weird. Japan is the one country which is aging faster than everybody.
Yes.
10,000. This is what they are willing to get. 10,000 in the next 2 or 3 years. Isn't that correct?
What about you?
Yeah, I think in my presentation I also underlined the need for what we call targeted migration. Germany was the first country to experiment with that. For example, we had a number of thousands of Indians, IT experts. But targeted migration means that they need to fulfill certain criteria. For example, we need educated migrants, okay? We need skilled migrants. And the reason we need that is that our continent's very poor demographics. Very few people in Europe understand the growing gap that we are going to have in the next couple of decades between people below 30 and people over 60. So, if we fail to address this issue, then, and this is where actually there is the link between economic and politics, where you are going to have more reforms when it comes to the labor market, labor rights, pension reform, because it won't be, I mean, you'll not be able anymore to sustain that level of welfare state that we have now. This is the case, either we like it or not. Unfortunately, and Professor Kubi mentioned that, if you take into consideration what is happening, how national politics or political developments on the domestic front, okay, actually have a spillover effect on Europe's policy, I mean, as a whole. We cannot discuss this issue seriously now because the French have presidential elections in 2017 and they are afraid of Le Pen. The Germans have their own elections in September 2000, and so on and so forth. We have rising populism, even with autocratic characteristics, in a number of countries. It becomes more and more fragmented, and that's why I said, in terms of forward thinking, it becomes more and more difficult with politicians, and the politicians do not explain this simple stuff in their electorates all across Europe. And this is also one of our main failures, that actually it's a failure of democracy as well in terms of representative democracy.
Pensions. Who's going to pay the pension in the future?
Well, this is now the point where I would like to thank, first of all, Professor Kubi, Professor Zervos, but also all those who contributed to this very interesting discussion. We don't have a break. Or, okay, if you want, please. Thank you very much again.
Development economy. Ms. Reiber has a Bachelor of Science in International Forest Ecosystem Management and a Master of Science in Environmental Science. Since 2010, she is Cooperation Manager at Unternehmensgrün, dealing with project management in sustainable development and ecopreneurship. Since recently, she is also the Interim Director of ecopreneur.eu, European Sustainable Business. Has been working with European partner organizations on several topics regarding green economy, example given green circular economies / startups.
Well, thank you all, and thank you to the organizers. It's been a great experience here, a wonderful input. Much listening to see all really active participation and great input, so thank you. Well, my topic is, do you hear me well? Is it okay? Yes. Yeah? So my topic is economy, green economy, trick or treat. So, but first, I want to just briefly tell you where I'm from or what whom I'm working for. The association is called Unternehmensgrün, It's the German Federal Association of Green Businesses. At present, we hold 180 sustainable member companies. It has been founded already quite a number ago. The founding fathers and mothers have been and are still green pioneers. It was founded in 1992. And back in the day, the companies that founded it, or the entrepreneurs, so to speak, are and still were and are still convinced that ecology and economy are not a contradiction. They always thought it together. We're a cross-sectoral lobbying organization, so we're trying to influence on a national level the policy-making process towards measures that facilitate sustainable business conduct. Also, we do regional networking events, of course, and we're a non-profit. We do not belong to any political party, and we're financially independent. So actually that builds onto the civil actors. And also, Unternehmensgrün is one of the founding members of Ecopreneur.eu, the European Sustainable Business Federation. We're a very young federation. It was just recently founded, but well, the official legal status we have since 3 months. We hold now 6 member associations. We're from France, Netherlands, Spain, Austria, Belgium, and Germany. And the member associations all work in their respective country towards sustainability, towards green economy, towards influencing the policy-making process, towards changing and transforming the economy towards sustainability. So in the last year we have been since like 14, 15 months, we've been very, very active. We had the founding press conference in Vienna. We did workshops in Madrid and Barcelona with and for green startups. It was great seeing the active participation, the movement of green startups. They wanted to change, or they still want, to change the economy there. We were invited by the European Parliament to a hearing for the Green Action Plan. We had a breakfast event, and so, so we're trying really to influence on national and European level the policy-making process. Another part of Unternehmensgrün is project management. It's not only working on a political level, but implementing development and vocational training for sustainable development. Because we see this as key. It's key to changing. It's key to really transforming society, to changing the economy. And that's what I've been doing the last 6 years, working with sustainable companies and schools, bringing students into sustainable companies that they can implement sustainable projects. So, back to, well, Ecopreneur and also Unternehmensgrün. The member organizations, we all believe that we bear responsibility for our economy, for our environment, and for our society. We want a Green New Deal and the Reformation and promotion of social innovation as well. And an important factor is also regional economic structures and small and medium-sized enterprises. So green economy, I know it has been debated for a longer time whether it should be included, but green economy is an essential part for sustainable development. So I looked for definitions. So the Green Economy Initiative by the United Nations Environmental Programme says that a green economy is one that results in improved human well-being and social equity while significantly reducing environmental risks and ecological scarcities. The other one from the OECD says fostering economic growth and development while ensuring that natural assets continue to provide the resources and environmental services on which all our well-being relies. So basically both concepts try to see the planetary boundaries. And in simple terms, it's green economy is low carbon, resource efficient, and socially inclusive. So I did I put two slides in, just to make it a bit clearer. It's ecosystem, economy, human well-being, but also green economy. You can see it in the first one. It has a bit of limits to human well-being. The upper part says green economy. So this is where sustainable enterprises have been until now, focusing on ecosystem and economy. And but also in recent years, you know, the concept of social enterprises is becoming more and more important as well. So, and what is a green business? Well, it's very complex. It entails clean transportation, efficient energy production. We've heard it all already, so I'll just make it a bit, you know. Better water and waste management, greener buildings in all areas. So everything can be green, everything can be conducted in a more sustainable manner. And green economy is essential to achieving these sustainable development goals. It aims at reducing environmental impacts, aims at poverty reduction, and is working towards a fair and just economy on regional, national, and global level. So, just from my experience, I've been thinking while I was sitting here, the companies we represent, in German it's called grünes Urgestein, basically the very core of sustainability. That's what they have in their business model. It's not that they want to green a little bit. They have sustainability as a business model. They want to create social and environmental value. They want to change something. They want to do business, yes. They want to have a profit, of course, but not at all costs. They want to bring something positive to society. And this since many, many years. And their value system is very high, and I'm very grateful that I could still working with them. And but I also learned that there are 3 steps towards changing the economy. So conservative, so it's seen as sustainability versus production. Oftentimes, the argument is it costs time and money, it's complicated, it's useless, it contradicts logic and competition, and the compulsion. I said compulsion of profit. How much profit do we really need? It's a question that I cannot answer. And then the second step is that companies reconciliate. So, because already nowadays there are companies, you know, a number of them, that prove the opposite, that being a sustainable enterprise or company is not so complicated. They have ethics, they use cost efficiency, and it's also demand pressure. So for example, the companies that we have one, it's a brewer. So he's brewing beer since many, many years, and many years ago he decided he wanted to carbon neutral. So he didn't care whether society or like somebody else wanted. He wanted to change that. He wanted to have a carbon neutral company. So he did a lot of different measures, and he achieved it. So this is ethical conduct. So the third step is that sustainable enterprises are more competitive because they are sustainable. They do ethically right things. I mean, there are a lot of really, really bad companies out there. It has been stated many times already. So also when you produce sustainably, the product performance is higher. So organically produced food is of course better for human being and also for the environment. And another important factor is shared values with customers. And interestingly enough, the generations before us, you, they have been very loyal to their brand. Nutella or Heineken. You know, it had to be that brand. However, this is changing. So younger generations they don't care if it's what brand it is. They want it to have produced sustainably. So, and the very, very tricky part is greenwashing. And in our experience, it does jeopardize the integrity of truly sustainable companies. And well, greenwashing is that to make people believe that your company is doing more to protect the environment than it really is. So it's in German. Recently, McDonald's had this really wonderful advertisement saying that they have now organic burgers. And they also said 1,275 organic stores. I mean, McDonald's is not sustainable at all, whatsoever. And even the employees had a T-shirt, "I work for an organic store." It's ridiculous. It was offending to see that. Another one was that the Nuclear Association of Germany said they had also big ads saying that we are saving the climate. No, you're not. I mean, your very core product is not sustainable at all, so you cannot save the climate. That's one of the few examples that I wanted to bring. And one has to be very, very careful. How do you see if something is really green and sustainable? There are labels, of course, and you know all of them, Demeter, Fair Trade, and so on. But bigger multinational companies use this strength now to make others believe they're green as well. So, I didn't want to stick too much with negative examples. And as I said before, they're green and circular business models. If you take a look at a company, you need to see what is their core business model. And important is that in each business decision, they include sustainability considerations. What kind of energy do I use? What kind of supplier do I use? Do I have, collaborative production? Is it cradle to cradle? Is it digitization? I mean, there's so many new business models arising that are much more sustainable. So just take a look. Like if you just do your research, it's really interesting. It's fascinating to see how to transform economy, and that's just a list. So, for example, Target, they produce floors. That's one of them. What? Oh, you're doing it, thank you. Giroflex, they produce, it's a cradle-to-cradle design. Office chairs. Another one it's called Original Unpacked. You might have heard of it. It's a store that doesn't have any wrapping. So you have to go there with your little jars and everything. So there are just a few examples on different business models. Or Group Switzerland. Their sales of own label brands that are organic or sustainably produced with sustainable standards has much increased over the recent years. And, very interesting, no one should. The first one is English, the other is German, because I didn't want to do the translation and maybe do it wrong. It's from McDonald's, Coca-Cola, sorry, Tom Laforge, and he had the English translation, the English citation is not so harsh as the German one, but even a company like Coca-Cola is realizing the market is changing. So, important consumers has been mentioned before, and consumers want to know about the water footprint, carbon footprint, fair trade practices, and so on. But what is important, but he says in the German one that big established brands lose loyalty, so to speak, and also market share, because new and smaller brands that provide social and cultural, how do you say, use or value creation. So that's interesting to see. And that's the $1 billion paradigm change. That's something I just thought might be interesting for you to know. Also important, consumer trends. Younger generations pay much more attention. So immaterial value is much more important to them. They, I just can't speak for myself and others that I know, that I trust companies more that are active in changing policies, in being socially active, and also consumers want to have carefree consumption. So, well, ethic is not a matter of marketing, it's for the entire companies, as I stated before. So, we're going from Coca-Cola to homemade lemonade, to McDonald's organic burger, from Beck's to craft beer. So, market is changing and economy is transforming. Yes, it's slow. We cannot be like over excited, but there is a lot going on, a lot that we can learn, a lot that we can need to change still. But the work of the green pioneers of the last years, it has paid off. It is paying off. So, but it's a long and difficult process. But we get it. So, a little bit of green economy in the European Union. I mean, the EU has been more and more active in including green economy consideration in their policies. For example, the Green Action Plan, circular economy, innovation is a big key factor, sustainable production, consumption, extended producer responsibility, and so on. The Green Action Plan, it aims to help small and medium-sized enterprises to take advantage towards, or offered by transition to a green economy. Also, awareness raising of resource efficiency is very important factors. Often SMEs don't even know that much about how they can reduce resources and how they can be more efficient. With the potential, it's also so circular economy. So it's estimated could make up 3 million jobs by 2030. It can lead to resource resilience, saving resources, waste reduction, a big factor. Yes. And also just a few numbers, but I think more important is the active citizenship, what I wanted to show you before. But still, I mean, it has reached the European level. So the Horizon 2020 program dedicates 60% on sustainability and environment. EU has a clear strength in eco-industries. Employment in the sector has been growing. So it goes on. There is a market change. So, proposed policies and initiatives, since there is so much to be done, important is that prices of a product need to state the ecological truth and the social truth. Oftentimes, well, most of the time, still the external costs of a product is not included in the actual price. And that's a problem. It needs to be included. What does it mean if I degrade the environment? I mean, pollute water, pollute air. It has to be valued and put into the actual price. Resource efficiency needs to be strengthened. Well, and also promoting best practice. An important factor is that the EU has to become a launching customer. So if there are calls for different initiatives, then of course sustainable companies should be favored over conventional ones. It has to be. So, and also interesting is of course, I don't know how strong Greece is in economy for the common good. Is that something that, yeah? Okay. So it's also one important factor. Sustainable European trade and market. Yes, of course, we have to, Europe has to be the leader in green processes and technologies. And one of my favorite topics, education and training. I mean, I have been working with youngsters, I've been working with businesses, and in 2010 it was still really tough work to convince schools sending students to green businesses, to sustainable businesses. But now there's much better resonance. People are slowly realizing that you have to bring these things together. So it has to be included in the curricula. It has to, we have to define green skills. You have to be able to include sustainability thinking in your knowledge base. So also extended producer responsibility is an important factor. I will just skip this a little bit. And another, well, since active citizenships, well, our organizations are very active, but I also wanted to just name a few others. So Economy of the Common Good, it's a movement, and they developed a matrix on how to assess your company or your NGO, whatever, how green, how sustainable you truly are. And then they also offer measures on how to become more, so it's very encompassing. There's the Deutsche Umwelthilfe, it's an NGO. They do studies on, or a survey on official car use. So by politicians, what kind of cars do they drive? Often not electric cars, not really sustainable cars at all. So they're trying to put pressure and showing that, of course, the government has to be a front runner. The Urgewald, it's lawyers that do different kind of studies, and also important, like they check investment of banks. Very important. What does the bank do with your money? Is it weapons, nuclear, coal? And the surveys or the studies they do, also you can see and judge for yourself whether you want to be and invest your money with a bank that has weapons or invests in weapons. And Energiewende is a very famous, has been named already several times, and I will not state again that on the 16th of May, the first time 100% coverage of their energy demand, so you know that now. And I'm just going to end with this. It's about values, it's about attitude, it's about the individual. It's up to us to change economy and society. And with this I want to end, and I want to thank you and wish you luck, and bye.
Our next guest speaker is Professor Dr. Dorothee Denay. She's going to discuss about the Sustainable Development Pillar, environment sustainability, from civic action to lifestyle politics. Professor Dr. Dorothee Denay, since 2015, is a professor of political and social system in Germany and comparative politics at the University of Gießen. During 2010 until 2013, she was a visiting professor at the University of Hagen. And in 2008 until 2009, was a research fellow at the Center for Religion, Economics and Politics at Collegium Helveticum at the University of Basel, Switzerland. Furthermore, she is women's representative of the Institute of Political Science. Her research areas are participation in democracy research, governance and civil society, as well as politics and religion.
You're still here in this late afternoon. I appreciate it very much. And I also appreciate very much the fact that I was invited to come here. Thank you very much, Nicole. Thank you, Joris. You're over there. No. I think, who was asking the question about political participation? Is it? Oh. I might offer some answers to your question. I hope I will. And I will also catch up with my colleague who was talking about the relevance of our understanding of citizenship. But what I will offer today will be far beyond what we discussed today, because in our scientific debate and public debates, there are some new crazy ideas in the air, and I want to introduce them briefly. But first, I will relate more directly to what I'm doing in my own research, which is focusing on political participation and the role of the citizen. So we already discussed extensively our understanding of sustainability, so I'm not going to come back on that. I just want to line out that if we consider political participation and the citizens' role within the debate on sustainability, there is a very important social dimension to sustainability. And that includes, for example, the citizens' satisfaction of basic needs, such as it's about the quality of life, it's about decent living, livelihood through fair labor. The second point is that it includes social resources such as human capital, knowledge, and social capital. It includes equal opportunities, and last but not least, political participation. And of course, you already know different definitions, what political participation actually is. I would like to introduce our own definition of political participation that we came up with, a friend of mine, Tina Olteano and I. And we define political participation as actions and behavior by citizens who seek to stimulate, initiate, shape, and affect social political processes, or simply encourage reflecting already existing structures and decisions. I prefer this open approach to the definition of political participation, which allows us to appreciate all forms, and I think this is very important for your question, that we appreciate all forms of political participation that might possibly contribute to sustainability. So it's not only about voting a party with a green agenda, but it's going far beyond that. And just to give you some crazy ideas, what it could be, we have been discussing this very little today, it could be like illegal action, liberation of animals from kind of industrial farming. That's also a contribution, it's illegal. And the variety of possible actions is really broad, and it leads finally maybe to things like religious idea for the integrity of the creation. So it's really broad range of possible political instruments that citizens could use. I start from that participation is a principle a basic principle of democracy, and that there is no democracy without participation. So this is really the bottom line I start on. And there are various forms of political participation. I already mentioned conventional and unconventional forms of political participation, latent and manifest forms of political participation, individual and collective forms, and legal and illegal forms of political participation, and so on. So now I will give you a very short summary of some possible actions that citizens could take, and I will share some observations concerning the role of the citizens within the debate on sustainability. To be short and dirty, we have to realize that the debate on sustainability was initially an elite project. And to a certain extent, we can observe this fact even until now. And I think we had some taste of this elite debate today as well. Left intellectuals and propagandists, protagonists have dominated the discourse. What does this mean for the citizens' role and what is expected from the citizens if we have this approach from the Club of Rome and other intellectuals who push the debate on sustainability forward? It means that the citizens have to be educated. They have to be educated, they have to be trained, they have to be sensitized, and we start from the assumption that somebody knows better what is best for the other, and is going to explain how to do it. And you pointed this out this morning, the behavior of the North towards the South. I think we still have this approach very much within development politics and development aid. In the 1980s, we could, at the latest in the 1980s, sometimes even earlier, we can observe a remarkable new mobilization of citizens in many Western countries. There are many reasons leading to such mass mobilization, even today, and using very creative forms of protesting addressed towards different topics concerning sustainability, such as food, for example, energy, climate change, agriculture, the saving of the seas, and so on. From the perspective of political science, it's really interesting that we can observe a shift of the addressees of these protests. In earlier times, it used to be the state who was addressed. Protest against the state's responsibility and behavior with this responsibility, and they should change their policies. But in our days, it's quite different. There is no Occupy government, there is Occupy Wall Street. So that's why we observe a shift of power from the state to the so-called global firm, as Colin Crouch calls it. And the protest is addressed towards these global firms. And they are claimed to be responsible for what's happening now. So, what is the role of the citizens in this context? The citizens are demanders, fighters for the better, and this, in the post-democratic discourse, we would say that the citizens, their protest addresses or is directed against the politics of the backrooms, and they want to change that. Have the period model, things are happening at the same time. So parallel to this protest and the shift of protests from state to global companies, we can also observe that the debate on the sustainability and environmental politics is moving into the institutions within the political system. And not only this, also into the market, as my colleague already pointed out with her presentation. So now the debate has arrived in the mainstream, I would say. In earlier times, the debate on sustainability was definitely a landmark, I would say, between the left and the right. It's not anymore. Everybody is for sustainability. And I just gave you a very short selection of statements within party programs. Everyone is for sustainability. And all these labels of fair trade and ecological standards are very well established within any field of the market. So sustainability became became part of our everyday life. So that means that everybody is for sustainability, all citizens are for sustainability, only on different grounds. And this is kind of important, that they have different grounds and different motivation to act towards, to promote sustainability. And of course, their commitment might be very different from the different actors. It has already been mentioned today that by having this shift of the debate into the institutions, into political institutions and into the market, a new sphere has opened for the citizens, and that is the political consumerism. Let me just read out the definition of consumer citizens by Scarlin. Consumer critique is fundamental to citizenship in the age of globalization. It brings into the daylight the dangerously hidden issue of political power of corporations. It exposes the potential power of consumerism as citizens and provides incentives to businesses, which regulations increasingly does not, to mind cooperate responsibility to and dependency on democracy. End of the quote. So this is a really important change of the role of the citizen. It means, let me put it also very short, that we have now a new construction of citizens' identity. We are what we buy. We are constructing our identity by buying certain products. But this is not only a political statement, it's also a social communication that I'm addressing other people by the products that I'm carrying around and constructing my own identity. This, of course, has also crazy developments. We had a very good McDonald's example just a few minutes ago. That we are consuming products that are fair, clean, whatever, and at the same time we are continuing to destroy things, we are wasting resources by consuming so-called fair or clean products. So we have something like politically correct consumerism, and this, of course, leads to another role for the citizens. The citizen then is responsible and constructing its identity by consuming. And there is a completely different strategy from political consumerism that I think we should also take into consideration. That is, that citizens are using or looking for niches for retreat, to retreat themselves from the society and to come up with a completely different lifestyle, with a completely different way of interacting, and they are constructing something like a parallel society. I know usually we use this word of parallel society in other contexts, but of course this is also a specific form of a parallel society. It's closed, it's very exclusive, it is only about interaction between the insiders of this society, and it is the insiders, they act correctly and responsible in, within a world that is supposedly hostile, dangerous, dirty. And of course there is this inside and outside my English words are disappearing. Reception. Thank you. I'm too tired today. I have to excuse myself. So this form of action, it's political action, is very much connected to self-sufficient experience for this group, for this inside group. And usually it does not address very much to the society, to political institutions. It's more closed, and there is no strong politicization towards the outside of the community. So, what is the role of the citizen in this context? It means that citizens have a choice. They have a choice how they want to live and where they want to live. And so they can choose to be within the in-group and live the right life and do everything correct or to live in the dirty world and be a political consumer or not. Apart from creating a parallel society and to retreat oneself from into a niche, there are other ideas in the air, and I would like to introduce two that go beyond what we discussed until now. And one is the post-growth economy. It is a more radical idea for change that includes that, and from the two ideas that I'm going to present, this is the moderate one, the other one is more radical. The post-growth economy means that there is an economy based on the strategy of sufficiency. This is really important because you this morning were mentioning this unlimited hunger of the citizens, and this is a completely different idea, that saying that we have enough for everyone. There is no need to grow because we already have enough for everyone. And it goes along with the idea that we have to dismantle industrial and especially global division of labor. And it is in favor of strengthening local and regional self-sufficiency. I'm not presenting these ideas because I believe in it. I'm very, very critical about it, yes? But I want to introduce it because I think if we are talking about what are the options of citizens, then this is definitely one. And it's a very utopic idea. So what is the idea behind it? It means that if we change the economic system, then we will have also a change within the society in the long run. That's the idea. It will have an impact. But this idea is more moderate than the next one because it actually starts from the ground that we keep the political system, we only change the economy. And this will have some impact on the political system as well. This is also a very intellectual debate on post-growth economy. And the next one is very radical, as I said. It's the post-capitalism idea of Paul Mason. It is more radical, it's revolutionary, it might be even militant at some point. And it starts from the idea that there is an interdependency between environment, economy, and human rights. And if we want to change things, we have to have a radical change of this interdependency. Post-capitalism claims for socialization of the global finance system. It promotes the idea of a new work-life balance that has another understanding what the value of work is and what work actually is. It also includes care work as an important part of work that has to be done, and not only employment. And it promotes non-profit forms of work. Equality and solidarity are basic principles of Mason's idea of post-capitalist utopia. So I said it's revolutionary, it's very progressive, it's a very progressive approach towards the problem of sustainability. And this is not only changing an individual life, but it's the idea of changing the entire society and the political system at once. I said that already. So if we agree with this, follow this idea of this revolutionary change, we actually come back to the political debate of the 70s, and I found this interesting pictures that some of you might remember. It says, we don't want just one cake, we want the whole fucking bakery. So it's not about, having little benefits or little changes or changing one law. It is about changing everything and how the political system functions. So I come to my conclusion. I think if we try to describe the transformation of the citizen's role and the pluralism of the different forms of political action, then we quickly realize it's not only about voting every 4 or 5 years, a party with a green, more or less green agenda. It is far more. It is this educational approach of raising awareness, but it is also about protest, illegal action, political consumerism, parallel society, up to the idea of overcoming the existing political system. We also observed that the addressees of political action have changed dramatically in the past few years. First, citizens were addressing the state as the most responsible and powerful institution or setting to be in charge of sustainability and the environment. And then moving towards other institutions, today we were many times addressing international institutions and organizations and say they are responsible. The UN has, the European Union has too. So we are addressing other political institutions, but also protests and other forms of political activism address global firms. And we have this other form of activism which is really important, and we learned a lot about it today from different presentations and examples that we were discussing. It is about self-empowerment. Citizens are no longer waiting for any other person or institution to deal with their problems, they just solve it themselves. And so this, of course, goes along with the post-democratic crisis, with the loss of confidence and trust towards political actors and politicians. I think there are some important questions in the air that we have to keep in mind and discuss in maybe next year at other conferences, whatever. I think we have to discuss whether what the social, political and economic consequences of this new kind of regionalism actually is. I think we have to be very much aware of the fact that it goes along with a strong tendency towards the right within Europe. And concentrating so much on regional development and regional interaction, it might be part of promoting right-wing politics at the same time. And in Germany there are some first critical studies conducted that proving that, for example, biological farming goes very well along with right-wing extremism. And I think we exclude this all the time. I think sustainability is such a nice thing, it's friendly, it's peaceful, but it's not always. It's also excluding, and it's also exclusive in a racial context. Thank you very much.
Is Mrs. Christina Kataxi. The speech topic is about sustainable development pillar of society. Can cities be inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable? The role of all of us in sustainable development policies and practices. Christina Kataxi is a marine scientist holding a Master in Water Resources Science and Technology in National Technical University of Athens, Greece, and a Master in EU Studies, Centre International de Formation Européenne, under Zalmanet Scholarship. She was a city servant Space Macedonia. The position currently is a freelancer marine scientist, environmentalist, which is her main profession, and a youth worker trainer, secondary profession in Greece and abroad, being registered as a trainer in the Youth and Lifelong Learning Foundation, Ministry of Education, in the subject of environment.
Hello. Students for inviting me to be a member of their team. I had a very nice discussion at midnight. Oh, bravo. You are amazing. So they asked me a presentation about what we agree regarding sustainable development. The question is difficult because the first part is what we are doing in Greece, generally. in the matter of job, how do we survive, what are we doing, and second is, can we do something about sustainable development? So we try to do that in action, and this is what I'm going to present to you. So when we are looking at the goals, we said that, okay, goal 11 is something that we would like to see in our city, the city of Thessaloniki. We would like our city to be inclusive, to be safe, to be resilient, to be sustainable, and we are lucky enough because the city of Thessaloniki has been chosen in the resilient group of cities of the world. So Leon already said some things about that, and of course you can find many info on the internet or even discuss with Leon for more. And what was happening before? We had 8 goals, and to be honest with you, we had Olympic Games, our economy was huge, we had a good life. And then when I was in the university, we were all discussing about goal 7 and protection of the environment and the mammals and all the flora and the fauna, and that was it, because the rest, it was in English. Where now it is, all of them, and all of the 17 that are the new goals, but then Europe came and said that a part of the cities being inclusive, safe, resilient, sustainable, we want in Europe also these cities to be smart. So we have all these high-tech and competitions we see every week, hackathons that are happening also every now and then in order to use technology. To use technology for sustainable development. But if we go back, then the UN, long time ago, made the framework for the cities and made some tools that had circles. The circles of sustainability in order to include everyone, in order for everyone to have a say on that. And there were several methods in order no one to be left behind. And of course everything is a circle because life and nature is a circle, because if it wasn't for the biogeochemical circles, we wouldn't live, and we couldn't feed ourselves. And these are the circles of the resilient 100 cities that Thessaloniki is in, so it's following the same pattern. But these are the 2 circles that we are now in between them in Greece, and we don't have any space. So we want to live in the city. We want to support the city of Thessaloniki, although our political governments and generally the governments, we see every day that they go away. We want to go in because we don't want to lose our planet. And then it's not smart city, never. It's smart people. So cities are built without the wisdom of their people are poor cities, and this might be also the case for Greece. So we forgot about what sustainable development is. We only remember that last week when we were speaking with the translators and they were trying to note down all the words that they can be used during this conference, and we started saying some things, and we said, okay, forget about everything. It's a complex thing, but we want to go local. So we went to 17 goal, and the students of sustainability with YouthNest and the 100 resilient city, and especially the city of Thessaloniki, we went local and had a workshop yesterday afternoon. And we took some elements from the resilient circle and the chronic and the acute shocks that this methodology wants to put in the society and see how the people can respond. That's why we took transportation, heat wave, and refugee crisis. So what we did, we said that we are in a coastal city. Thessaloniki is a coastal city that has 1 million inhabitants. Thessaloniki used to have 1 million inhabitants. Now it doesn't have 1 million. Now we are less because people went away. Nevertheless, that is the icon of everyone from Thessaloniki. And if you search on the internet, this is the info you are going to get because no one has put the actual number of 2011 counting. So the city authorities, we have 2 very good mayors, were inviting the key players to attend an open and TV broadcasted discussion, 3 pillars of sustainable development, 3 case studies for us, transportation, heat wave, and refugee crisis. These were the players. So for the transportation, we had the bus company, which is actually the only public mass transportation company in Thessaloniki. An NGO which is the picking passenger, and scientists that it's like all the universities and the research centers of Thessaloniki together. And then we had the refugee crisis, which was again an NGO that is doing a solidarity work. The Union of Hoteliers, because I'm sure you already know that there's a big discussion in this, and being a tourist country, and actually all the money that come due to tourism, and there are in the islands a lot of discussions of what is going to happen in the summer, that the tourists are coming and the hoteliers want to have tourism, and there is a big issue in the islands, and the town council. The refugee crisis is a real example also in Thessaloniki, because next to the airport there was a big discussion last month. They wanted to go to a wetland and establish a place for the refugees there. So the example was fitted to that example. And the third one was the heat wave. It is a problem in Thessaloniki. Every summer there is an announcement from the municipality that there are certain places that whoever is not feeling well, whoever doesn't have an air conditioning in his house, can attend that places in the really, really warm days. And then it was the union of those elder people and an NGO and the scientists again. Many people attended. We were more than 70 people. The groups performed, 6 to 8 participants in every group, 9 groups in total. A lot of work. We were expecting mainly people from the university, youngsters, the age of 25, 35. Many people came that also have a real saying in the city. I remember yesterday that the responsible for environmental education for Thessaloniki prefecture came yesterday because she's doing such stuff, so she learned about it and participated in that. At the end there was a questionnaire. We did well, nothing negative. Bravo to all again. And just to say the outcome of every... So there were 2 radical things that I want to mention that were pointed out before the mixing. At the beginning, every group was formed and then we mixed them. So in the beginning, when the scientists were all together and they didn't have the citizens and the NGO together, they said something radical that it's not even from the, you cannot even hear it from a political mouth, to end the monopoly of the bus company of Thessaloniki. And the second radical thing that was mentioned is to move the industrial zone of Thessaloniki from the west part of the city to the east. So in the beginning we heard such stuff, but then when the debate was really happening, them an understanding between the different parties. So at the end, in the transport group, there was a collaboration between the 3 parties, and they decided. So they decided to use the bus lane. This is what they said, that it's the most important thing in Thessaloniki, to use the bus lane in order for everyone to go fast in his work, to support the public transport, and also to make the educational programs and sensitizing the society, etc., for using the bus lanes. In the heat wave, which was the industrial zone, there was a lot of discussion about the industrial zone. Finally, there was a collaboration, although the conflict existed until the end. But the industry decided that they will move on only if the NGO and the research center will support them. So otherwise, they will not. And the most promising was the outcome from the refugee crisis, where the example, okay, is a vague one, and it cannot actually be implemented in Thessaloniki, but it surely can be implemented in Athens or in other areas. So the hoteliers decided that they can give some of the rooms of the property to the refugees in order to integrate them in their society, and of course use the multiculturalism that is coming with these people to Greece for tourism purpose. So that was really something that we can also advertise, promote, and say this idea to the others. This is what we said in the beginning. This is what we love because we have collaborated again and again as individuals. It's a saying from a famous Greek, Cretan, to love. This is why we are in Greece. We haven't been in Germany yet. And we are still fighting for this country because we love responsibility, because we want to make a change, and because we want to do something, although we don't have the power. But I think that yesterday there was a clear result that 100 people in 3 hours had beautiful ideas that can do something tomorrow. And this is, I have understood that is the Students for Sustainability, this month that I'm collaborating with them, is a group, an open group that is inviting everyone that has the time to do something collaboratively, that has the time to do something for the city. So let's congratulate the people of Students for Sustainability and be with them in every next step.
So we are a little bit late. Are there any questions for the 3 previous speakers that you would like? Can we have a microphone, please? Do we have a live microphone?
Dead after me.
Hello, I'd like to ask something to Mrs. Julian Reiter. You said that people used to be loyal to several brands for a lot of reasons. Specifically, McDonald's to organic burger. Generally, in my opinion, the organic food is less tasteful than the simple food products. This is because of the sugar. Prefer something entirely organic and tasteless. So I think say that the product has one or more naturals.
Well, I think that's very
So, if you grow up with organic food, it can happen that you hate it in the end because it's too organic. And some people that grow up with conventional food and really love organic food in the end. So, there's no answer to that.
It's a matter of marketing.
Is there anyone else who would like to pose a question? Yes.
I'm an organic producer, so but I'm trying to be as non-dogmatic as possible. So I'd like to. One thing that I tell people is that if we base the quality on taste, the quality of food on taste, we lost the game. Because the people who work with GMOs, or whatever they call the new technology, because as you know, they changed the name of the technology, so the legislation doesn't catch them anymore. They can give you any taste that you want, because taste is something, as you said, very personal. Very personal. I was in the United States enjoying Ouzo, not well enjoying it because the other things were missing. Americans hated it because for them it was licorice. And it was the worst thing that you could put in their mouth. So, from what the presentation, however, said, is that we should start now attaching to our decisions other criteria. I saw some beautiful criteria and I want to comment on that, and thank you very much. Like, who is the farmer? I tell people that if you come to me for my tomatoes, I'm not sustainable, because tomatoes will come to the market from anywhere in the world with any taste, with any color, with any accompanying. I like to convince people that I'm a good fellow citizen, and they should come to me because I'm a good fellow citizen. And I'm a farmer, of course, but they should encourage and support other neighbors who do other things, but they are the kind of fellow citizens which they want to have around. And for me, think about it. I'm not telling you what you should do, I'm only telling you what I do. And let's start seeing the people behind things, products. And I'd like to congratulate, I'm very happy I stayed here, I'm very happy I came, I wish the minister and the rest were here, because I'm very, very thankful, and go back to my fields tomorrow, raining or not raining, with a lot more power to work and deliver for this country.
Thank you very, very much. Is there any other one who would like to pose a question or a comment or something? Sorry? Yeah, so I guess that you are tired, and you're right to be tired. So, on behalf, would you like to comment something?
Generally.
You are from the students, you used to be faster, you know?
No, for the entire conference, it's not a question for the last.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm old also.
It's like summing up some of the arguments that I underlined. For example, from the speeches of Mr. Reiber, of Professor Deneuve, of Dr. Skura, of the first round table with Mr. Efthymiadis, and from all the great things that we heard from this great man over there. Thank you for being here with us today. I would like to say that what remains from this conference here today is that what is all about sustainable development is that we have to change our notions and our mentality. We will not wait for the economic system to change by itself, or we cannot wait for a political revolution to happen by itself and impose sustainable thinking. We will not wait for some great farmer that will have apart from finishing the universities and masters and whatever, and having the greatest ideas and technologies to implement in his farm, we want each citizen to, by himself or herself, to act, to realize what is happening in the world, and to make the change by himself or herself, to be the change they want to see in the world. And what this man, I should really learn your name, sir, is that we need synergies, and not by saying, okay, networks and again networks, because we're tired of hearing this stuff. We really want like collaborative economy and collaborative communities. In a world with 11 billion people, in some years from now, the world cannot sustain one person having one business. Okay, maybe he will be lucky and he will be successful, but we need to come together and work together and have prosperity. Prosperity doesn't mean that we all have Porsche Cayennes, for example. Maybe some of us have, but it means that we have whatever we need to be happy, and we do not leave anyone aside without having, without having anything. So I think what we have to learn is that each and every one of us, when we leave here today, we go to our friends and we say, okay, you know, there is a way of changing things. I'm not going to wait for a government, because earlier Dr. Skura said that there is no single environmental institution in the EU. And of course there is no such institution in the entire world. There is just the UN, and it's trying to find, to adopt agreements like the newest one, the COP21 agreement. We just have to make the change, and we have to tell our friends first of all, and we have to start acting. So thank you. On behalf of Students for Sustainability, I would also like to thank everyone for being here, and I will yield the floor back to you.
Thank you. So, I'm extremely tired and I don't want to tarry more, but I would like to really thank you for being here, even the odds were against us. We had the Money Show this weekend. The weather was awful. I've never seen such thing in one day. Like, it was crazy. Nevertheless, we are extremely happy that you came. We're extremely happy that we shared the things that we believe are correct for the society. I'm extremely happy that you, as a producer, you joined our conference. You are our target group, among others, and we invited the other ones also to join us. We're doing more efforts to bring people like you in this kind of auditoriums. I would like to thank personally Professor Moskiopoulos, because since the very beginning embraced we were not an official team, but we wanted to do something in the university, and he said, I will help you, and he gave us the means and everything. I would like to thank the speakers that they traveled, they joined us, and they delivered their respective perspectives on the matter of sustainable development. I'm happy, but also sad that the efforts of 9 months are ending today. Actually not ending today, because tomorrow we have a side event in WE, and we invite you to join us with your nephews, with your parents, with your grandparents. It's an open event, you can come whenever you want, from 11 o'clock up until 8. We have small farmers that they were demonstrating and selling their products, and we really urge you to support them and buy their products and taste their products, because this is how we put theory into practice. Thank you all. I don't know, I have many things to say, but I think we're so tired that tomorrow. Thank you very, very much. I would like to thank all these people that for 9 months they are running with me, for me, and everything, and also jobs in the projects like Ecofest, Resilient, join us or invite us to join you. That would be a bigger pleasure for us, because we want to learn more, and we are willingness to incorporate and to accept people from any field that you may be. It doesn't matter, sustainability is for everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming.